My name is David Andrew Hill. I go by Andy. My rank is I was a Lieutenant Commander in the United States Navy. I knew I was up for orders. They had offered me a laboratory technician school, which would have been good training. And again, without just to talk that down, good training. But it was not something that I felt like I would enjoy as an operator. So I wanted to stay as a mechanical operator. So they sent me to the fleet on the USS Nimitz. USS Nimitz was still a relatively new ship at the time. Had basically got clearance to do anything that an aircraft carrier could do at the time, and it was a very capable ship. And so when I reported to USS Nimitz, she was actually in an availability period in Norfolk Naval Shipyard, and I arrived onto the ship, and it's this huge industrial complex with all these hoses running in and out of almost every doorway and every opening on the ship, and you're told to basically find your way onto the ship when essentially everything's covered up with some kind of covering or anything else, and you go down to the engineering spaces, and things aren't operating or things might be missing, and you're told to basically get qualified on something. And in the middle of all this, when I got there, they had this big inspection that was coming up, and the big inspection was that they were going to do a big material inspection of the ship. So I was a little bit more senior than most of the people that were in the training assignment at the time, so they put me in charge of a crew that was going to basically make an important part of the engine room, called the bilges, ready for an inspection. Most people would say, you know what, you got a job cleaning the bilges, and you think that was a good job? I said, well, it's good if you're supervising people, So I got to basically be a stellar person right away from that, and I basically got the people on my bilge cleaning team a 72-hour liberty because I told them I could do some things that they didn't think could be done. So they said, well, yeah, if you can do that, we'll give you a 72-hour liberty, which is unusual in the Navy. So I got myself and everybody on my team a 72-hour liberty, and we all had a nice weekend from that. But we passed the inspection. Well, I'll be honest with you. I had a little bit more knowledge of the mechanical systems, and I knew because I was in training that I was going to have to trace these systems out anyway. So I was the kind of guy that would put on a pair of coveralls and trace the system out on my back, which most people would not even think to do that. I was underneath the ship tracing out these systems, and when somebody asked me where something was, I now knew where it was, but what was more important was I knew everything that was going to drain into the bilges, and I basically proactively found that and capped it off, and I got the help of Norfolk Naval Shipyard, the guys that basically have all the water removal equipment, and I said, can I tell these guys what to do? And the guy said, well, sure, nobody else does, so I basically got essentially the janitorial staff working for me, and I told them where all the water was, and we stayed ahead of the water, so I had them basically preparing the spaces before we ever cleaned it or before we ever painted it. The guys in the other engineering compartments didn't think to do that, so I kind of got way ahead of them on that, and by the time they figured out what I was doing and how I was doing it and how well I was doing, it was too late for them, so I had already kind of beat them out of that. But in addition to that, when I finished qualifying, I was like, people were like looking at me, you know where all that stuff is? I said, yeah, you want to come see it? I can take you there. And it's like, no, I don't want to come see that. It's like, I don't ever want to go there, so, but I knew where everything was, so I was the right man for the job, I'll just say that. And we got underway, and so here we are on USS Nimitz. We're on our way down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for our refresher training. So you've got a bunch of people that have been through this before, you've got a bunch of people that haven't been through this before, and you got a bunch of people that say, here's the schedule. I think the schedule people had something in mind. I didn't know what it was, but they had something in mind. But what they had in mind was getting the air wing qualified. And so on night of 26 May, we had an aircraft landing accident. And I was relatively new. I was assigned to a repair locker. And during the aircraft landing accident, we lost quite a few of our shipmates, about 24. And when they started trying to fight a fire on a flight deck. We had essentially some new firefighting equipment. We learned a lesson from the Risk Any fire, from the Forrestal fire, from the Enterprise fire, and we had this in-deck aqueous foam solution that was spray up from the flight deck and put out any fire. The problem was that we didn't have a lot of training on how to operate it because it was a brand new system. And so when we activated the system, it did a very good job of putting out the fire. Unfortunately, it also did a very good job of rupturing itself. So when the system ruptured, we basically had to send in firefighting teams to put out the fire. And during the course of the casualty, one of those teams basically was knocked down by a weapon that basically cooked off, and that's where we lost most of the casualties. And where I was in a repair locker, I was right in the middle of where that rupture had occurred, so we did our pipe patching duties just like we were trained. And when the people start coming down from the flight deck, we had a triage station that was manned by medical officers, and we basically triaged those sailors when they came down the way that we were trained. And we basically, I think we saved a lot of lives. It could have been much worse, I'll say that. But I think the ship did a very good job. The captain was proud of what we did. I was personally commended for the action, so I felt like I was justified in what I did. But at the same time, you all of a sudden you realize that, hey, I'm on an aircraft carrier. My life should not be something I take for granted around here, and my job is certainly not something I should be, complacent about. So you basically thought about things, but it had turned out to be a very long day. We had been at some type of drill station for most of the day, and I was, essentially beat at the end of the day, and at almost, sometime after we had all been told to go to bed at TAPS, I was woken up in the middle of the night to respond to this fire, and everybody acted appropriately. So, we did as we were trained.